In 2002, 28 Days Later literally invented the modern-day zombie apocalypse genre. Although they don't use the word zombie, and technically it isn't a zombie film. 28 Days Later came out a full year before the publication of the first issue of The Walking Dead. And now we have 28 Years Later, the third film in the trilogy. And I'm going to give you a mostly spoiler-free review and tell you a couple of things that you should know about 28 Years Later before you go see it in the theater. Hey, I'm Mike. I studied film, I work in TV, and I love movies. Director Danny Boyle is best known for his breakout feature Trainspotting. Boyle met writer Alex Garland while directing The Beach, a film based on Garland's novel of the same name. The writer-director pair followed that up with 28 Days Later and Sunshine. In total, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland made 3 movies together before embarking on 28 Years Later. Alex Garland went on to write and direct Ex Machina and Civil War, among other projects. And Danny Boyle made Slumdog Millionaire, 127 Hours, and Yesterday, the brilliant film about a world in which everyone except a certain few have no memory of the Beatles. Boyle and Garland did not collaborate on 28 Weeks Later, the aptly titled sequel to 28 Days Later. Instead, a different writer-director combo took the helm, and rumors of Boyle and Garland's creative differences began to swirl. Boyle was looking for a new angle on the aftermath of the outbreak, and Garland wanted to explore the world they had created in a smaller, more focused way, and the two just couldn't come to terms. In Hollywood, the trades made it out into a big row, but in reality, the pair remain colleagues. They're just two extremely creative people with different visions on their work. Anyway, despite these differences, the pair have reunited for what is reportedly going to be 3 more 28 films. 28 Years Later being the latest, and would make a total of 5 films in the franchise when they're all done. When 28 Days Later hit theaters in 2002, the first issue of The Walking Dead was still a year away from publication. In fact, 28 Days Later and The Walking Dead opened using the same device, leading to speculation of a copycat. Both main characters were comatose when the virus broke out, and both wake up to a very different world around them. There are lots of commentary out there on who copied who. I read that the similarity of the opening scenes of 28 Days Later and The Walking Dead was purely coincidental, and I tend to believe that. It's a trope used to get us, the viewing audience, into the shoes of the main character. He's going to be asking the questions we'll be asking, experiencing things for the first time as we are. It helps get a ton of exposition out of the way quickly and easily. So I don't fault The Walking Dead for opening their story in a similar fashion. In fact, I'm willing to bet that if Walking Dead writer Robert Kirkman knew about 28 Days Later, he would have changed his opening just to avoid the comparisons. But since he was likely so close to publication, he had no choice but to go forward. Each franchise goes on to tell very different stories, and they hold very different ideas about humanity. The Walking Dead has far more faith in humanity than 28 Days does. You may have heard that 28 Years Later was shot entirely on an iPhone, and that's true. There are a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, 28 Days Later was famously shot almost exclusively on the Canon XL1. It was the first mini DV camera with an interchangeable lens. It helped them move fast and shoot a ton of footage cheaply. Much of the first 20 minutes or so of 28 Days Later is shot on the streets of an abandoned London, and I heard they stole those shots, meaning they weren't permitted, and they shot in the early morning hours to avoid traffic. Mini DV would have helped them move fast. At the time, in 2002, shooting on 35mm film would have required a lot of production support, and most importantly, light. And with the changeable lens the Mini DV camera gave them, Boyle could have used any number of professional lenses to get the job done. But nowadays, well-equipped digital cameras like the Alexa or Red come in small packages and shoot infinitely better videos in the Mini DV format. So why use an iPhone? I know Boyle is a fan of Steve Jobs, having made a film about the inventor of the iPhone, but in reality, he probably just used the phone because he could. The sensor on the phone is incredibly good, and with the right rig, they can put just about any lens they want on it. Here's a picture of the iPhone rigged up to a massive cinema lens. Nothing will look bad coming out of that lens. I talk to camera people all the time, and we find it hard to tell the difference between video shot on an iPhone and video shot with an Alexa. There are tons of videos on YouTube comparing the two, but the dead giveaway is the lens. But with all things being equal, the difference is negligible. In fact, the iPhone is probably harder to use in a modern-day professional environment. The reason the Alexa, or Red, is so popular with filmmakers is because it makes using them in a professional environment easy. Here's a shot of a rig Boyle and his camera team developed to get what they called a poor man's bullet time. And it's very effective, even if it's not Matrix-quality bullet time. In 28 Years Later, there are shots that expand the moment, like when an arrow hits an infected person and we see it from several different angles. Could Boyle have used an array of Alexas for bullet time? Sure, a director with his resume isn't really concerned about budget. Not the way he would have been at the start of his career, anyway. So did Boyle have to shoot on an iPhone? Probably not. But I like it because it gives an army of aspiring filmmakers the confidence to go out there and shoot their film. You have the tool right in your pocket. So what did I think of 28 Years Later? Without giving many spoilers, 28 Years Later follows Spike, a 14-year-old boy who only knows the small village on a secluded island off the Scottish coast that he lives in. They're separated by a narrow waterway that recedes, revealing a walkway to the mainland. Yet, when the tide is high, it's completely covered, preventing any infected persons from getting to them. We learn that Spike has reached the ripe age of 14 and is now allowed to forage on the mainland and contend with the infected people for the first time. While there, he realizes that there's a doctor that no one has told him about who could possibly heal his mother. She's spiraling downward from an unknown illness. The film deals with themes of life and death. In a world where death often comes suddenly and violently, there's a certain comfort in choosing the manner of your death. Respecting life also means respecting death. Spike and his mother find a pregnant, infected woman and aid in the birth of her uninfected baby. So there's the answer to that question. Then, in another moment, Spike and his mother meet up with a member of the Swedish Navy who's been stranded within the quarantine zone. We learn that while the British Isle is quarantined, the rest of the world has the virus pretty much under control and is moving on as if nothing happened. We get a glimpse of the Navy guy's phone and we see a picture of his girlfriend. The phone, the woman's appearance, everything is completely foreign to Spike. And we begin to question, why haven't the inhabitants of Spike's isolated village been rescued? They tell us that naval ships are patrolling, so then why has there been no effort to make contact with the naval ships? Ray Fiennes saves the film with his portrayal of the Doctor, who's memorializing the dead by saving their skulls in a type of shrine. We're told from Spike's dad that he's insane, but whatever it is they think he's doing doesn't seem so crazy in light of a zombie apocalypse. It's a fine story, set among the backdrop of an apocalyptic world which, since the original came out in 2002, is saturated with good stories. I guess I was looking for something different from the writer and director pair that started it all off. Anyway, these are my opinions, and I hope to hear your thoughts on 28 Years Later in the comments below. As always, film is about community. I'm Mike, and I love movies.